What I'm going to do as we're working on observation drawing and we're really just starting is to try and show you how to approach a drawing using construction lines to help you. If you have flat objects, it's tempting to draw around, try and draw, just put them on a piece of paper and draw around them, something like a paintbrush or a pair of scissors. But please don't do that. And again, set yourself up with a piece of paper. Make sure that whatever is behind the object is quite plain. This is quite dark, so I put white paper behind there. And it's also a good idea to have one main light source. So you either sit next to a window, or as I've got here, I've got a very strong light coming from this side, and as you can see, it's casting shadows down the side of the object. So first thing with anything, and particularly if is start with a line, and please don't use rulers. Okay, try and do this by drawing a very faint line to imagine that goes down the middle of the object, so right here. Okay, that way when I come to do either side, it's going to help me get this symmetrical. Now I'm going to make my drawing a little bit larger than the actual paintbrush, just to prove that I haven't drawn around it. So I'm going to guess the width. So I'm going to draw a horizontal line across, and that's going to be that part. Okay, and I'm going to end it there. And what I'm now going to create is a line that goes down the side that is parallel to here. I'm just going to check that this distance, and you don't need a ruler, this is how artists used in the past, and that distance are the same. So it's from the end of my pencil to where my thumb is. And then I'm going to draw a line down here. Again, don't worry if they're a little bit wobbly. So then I'm starting to have guidelines that will help me draw my paintbrush. Now, the width of the actual paintbrush and the width of my drawing is different. Now that doesn't matter. What I have to measure, I'm trying to get the proportion. That means that the different parts are an accurate size compared to the object. So the first thing I want to do, I've chosen my width. I now want to work out how long my paintbrush should be. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to measure the width as my guide, and then I'm going to go down the paintbrush and see how many times, 1, 2, 3, slightly more than 4. So I know that the length of my paintbrush is 4 times longer than the width. So then I come back to my drawing and I measure that. Again, this looks a bit primitive. You could use a ruler. 2, 3, 4, and I said slightly more, so I'm just going to go down. So that way, before I start, I know that my drawing is going to fit on my piece of paper without starting to do all the details. I'm sure you could start here doing the beautiful bristles and then the shiny bits and draw, and then you often find out you can't fit the rest of the drawing in. Okay, well that doesn't matter. Okay, so we've got a little box, and in that we're going to contain our drawing. So again, I want to know how long should the bristle part be. So I'm going to compare the width of the bristles to the height of the bristles, and the height is slightly shorter than the width. So what I want to do here, let's measure the width and put that down there. I can again use my finger to make a mark. So if the brush was square, if that part was square, that would be the same. So I'm just going to go up a little bit, and that's where the bristle part will end. I'm going to erase this. So it's all about comparing different parts. So then this part, this silver part, actually looks a bit longer than the bristles. So let's measure that again. It looks like a square, but let's see if it is. So let's measure that part and compare it, and it is exactly a square, so that's good. So again, I measure my width, I bring it down, I put a little marker, and then hopefully that part should appear like a square. Yes, and it should appear, yes, a little bit longer than the bristled part. Okay, so what I can start to do now, I can start to look at where the paintbrush starts to bend. So I can actually put, maybe I put a little line there, and I'm going to compare that to the width. It's about 75% of it, so about there and there, and I'm going to do another little mark. That shows you where that curve starts to straighten. So the rest of it, I'm going to do that a little bit darker, and I'm going to start my curve of my brush coming in, and then do the other side. Okay, now I'm looking at that, and that part looks a little bit too wide. So again, I'm going to go back, draw that little bit lighter, and that is starting to look a little bit more like it. I can then start to draw the rest of my paintbrush. It comes out a little bit wider here, and then it goes back down. When I do the other side, I can try and match it. Okay, now I'm looking at those lines, and I can see that this looks too thick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in a little bit further, both sides at a time, and I'm going to draw the rest of the brush like that, like that, and that's starting to look a little bit more like it. So as you can see, you won't get things exactly accurately straight away. So it's a lot about guessing it and looking. I think that looks a little bit better, but then I'm noticing that that doesn't curve all the way up there. There's actually a little straight part. Now what I can do is to start to draw the rest of the object. And what I'm looking at here are the bristles. So I'm just looking at line drawing, trying to make this a little bit softer. I don't need that line anymore. And so with things like paintbrushes, you can just start to do, don't try and draw all the bristles, because it'll end up being quite scribbly, but just draw a few of them, and I can carry on. And then I'm just looking at the rest of this part, some of the features of this silvery part. Again, I could be a lot more careful. And then I can see the numbers, and I'm not going to try, that's far too big, not going to try, I can see that these lines are not high enough up, so I'm going to change those. Go almost all the way across. Again, don't press too hard. This is a dark pencil, and I'm working quite lightly with it. So if you do see something like writing don't just copy it, just try and show the effect it creates. I know that's a 4, but I don't just want to write a 4 like that. I'm trying to create the idea of it on there. I can carry on working that. But that shows you basically how to start. I can then start adding more details and how it's all made much easier using construction lines.